Hi everyone, Ms. Stillman here. This is homework 2 key in the Unit 8 Part 2. So this homework is mostly about similar triangle proofs. So if you take a look at question 1, in the diagram shown, MN is congruent to MP. And we gave you a hint. What type of triangle is it? Well, if two sides are congruent, it's isosceles. And now I drew a picture over here. When you have an isosceles triangle, not only do you have two congruent sides, but across from those sides are the congruent angles. So what type of angles do we have? We have congruent base angles. Now, we're also given perpendicular sides, so I put the givens in that we have the congruent sides, the perpendicular sides over there. So that means the whole side MN is congruent to the whole side MP. Now that's a little harder to work with, so let's leave that for later. Let's take care of the perpendicular lines. We know that angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. Put in the right angles. That's a 2 there. Angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles because perpendicular lines form right angles, and angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent because all right angles are congruent. But now, what's so important about an isosceles triangle? If we can state it in our proof that we have an isosceles triangle, we can get congruent base angles. So first off, let's put in the fact that triangle MNP is isosceles because it has two congruent sides. If it has two congruent sides, we could get the congruent angles across from it. So this whole side will tell us that angle P, and this side will tell us that this angle N are congruent. Those are the base angles. So angle N, congruent angle P, because an isosceles triangle has congruent base angles. Now we try to use our vocabulary to make sure that we're clear in getting which angles are congruent. Now you could have done this a different way. We taught you earlier in the year that if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles blank them are congruent, opposite. The angles opposite them are congruent. That's another way of stating how I explained it over here. Now the last step, I have the right angles and I have the base angles congruent, so we can now say the triangles are similar. Triangle NRT is similar to triangle PSW by or because angle-angle similarity. Now what's great about this question is sometimes we've seen a part 2 where we can use our algebra skills or our proportion skills to solve the question. So I've redrawn the two triangles that they're referring to. RT is going to be 12, PW is 3, and we don't know these two, but they're equal. If they're both equal, they can both be our X values. So I'm going to go to SW and put an X, NT is an X, and let's set up a proportion. NT is the side that matches WP. And also, RT is over SW. So now we put the numbers where they belong. NT is X, PW is 3, RT is 12, SW is X. When you cross multiply, you get X squared equals 36. When you take the square root, you get X is 6. That's the positive answer. We go back. X is what we're looking for, SW. SW is 6. Okay, the second question. Yes, the second question, because that was a two-part proof and work question. Okay, so we are given parallel lines. When you see parallel lines, please look for congruent angles. LT is parallel to GR, that's given to us. What's great about this picture is N is in both triangles, so put it congruent to itself with the reflexive property. And now we have angle T, and we have to figure out which angle it's congruent to. Because we have parallel lines, these are parallel, you're going to see the bottom two angles, T and R, are congruent, or L and G. Now I can't call angle R by one letter, so I have to call it GRN, or I could have labeled it the number 1 and 2 or something like that. Now those angles are congruent because if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, corresponding angles are congruent. If you are the type of person who writes a little bit less on your proofs, this is the most important part. Corresponding angles are congruent. Now we could have done it, as I said, with L or R, GN. Now we know the triangles are similar because the angles because angle-angle similarity, the angles are congruent. And then we copy the proportion. They gave it to us. Just copy it down. And remember, the way we say it is because corresponding sides of similar triangles are in proportion. Or some version of that, like in similar triangles, the corresponding sides are in proportion. On the last question, because we have proportional sides, it's going to create similar triangles and parallel lines, so we'll get some corresponding angles. And we have a bisector, an angle bisector. So two angles are going to be congruent. BDE gets cut in half. There are the two angles. Now the first thing I'm going to do is look at angle A, C, and B as one giant triangle, and I've shown the work here that you can find the missing angle by B is 72. The good thing about this is because these two lines are parallel, with that line being put in there, we have the corresponding angle up there by D is 72. Core angles. I'm just going to abbreviate it as core angles for corresponding angles. Okay, well now we can look next to the 72. Look at that linear pair. I'm going to do the work over here. 180 minus 72 is 108. So angle EDB is 108, but we need to bisect that, cut that in half. I'm dividing it by 2 and get 54. Each of these little red angles, or purple or pink, whatever color I made it, are 54. Now, we can zoom our vision in just on this triangle to help us get angle DFB. I've made a little note down here. I drew the triangle big for us. Now we know one angle is 54, one angle is 72. We just add them, subtract from 180 and get 54. That's our answer. 54 is choice 2.